Hi there, everybody. My name is Kate, and welcome to my channel, Trinergy Awakens Naturally. So, a little subdued today. Today is the harvest moon, October of 25, and it's a supermoon, so it's supercharged with a lot of stuff. And for me personally, I wasn't expecting to do a message today, but here I am, because I'm a whole person just like everybody else is. I generally feel really, pretty okay with my world, and when stuff comes up, it resolves pretty quickly, whether it's, something real extreme, great, happy, or something really extreme in the, not so pleasant. It generally kind of balances back out, and yet there's been a prevailing sense of funk, all day today. And so I'm in inquiry and realize that, there's a supermoon. Well, duh, that makes sense. So if you're feeling a sense of betrayal because you have been, betrayed, oftentimes empaths are. That is kind of what we're here to do. That's part of the job that we are here to do. If you're a high healer, an energy worker, a light worker, a star seed, however you might identify, empaths are generally well suited and well seated in places where they're going to be dumped and left and betrayed by those around them, because oftentimes excuse me, in my humble opinion, we are there to teach people what it is to be really loved at a level that they really don't have any idea what that is. And we're just being our natural selves, and quite shocked sometimes when we realize what just happened here. How did I end up, being who I am and taking all this crap, and now I've been dumped and left, and now what do I do? And I'm not suggesting to you that this is an easy process. It is not. Maybe, I don't know, 7 or 8, 9 years ago, I had no idea what a narcissist empath runner chaser paradigm was. I didn't know what a dark empath was. I didn't know what an empath was, period. I didn't know any of that stuff. My spiritual practice looked very different than it does now. However, because of a brutal process of being the person that I am, naive and gullible and stupid is how I felt. I got dumped whenever my ex-husband wanted to leave our marriage. He did, and he aligned with my family, and my family of origin, which is very, very small, only a couple of members of that sucker left, that he aligned with them, and they all turned very bitter, very nasty, very ugly, very vicious, more so than they ever had been in the past. And I had to start looking at, what in the world is going on here, because not only was my health at stake, literally my physical health was at stake, and people were getting very janky with what was happening, with money, with housing, with my medical well-being, taking over custody of me sometimes whenever I wasn't able to speak for myself. I mean, it got very scary and very weird, and so I had a lot at stake, and more than anything that I had at stake for myself, I'll put it out there raw and real, because this is raw and real, and I'm certainly not the only person for whom this is real. My children were at stake. Now, my children, one of them was all the way grown, and the other one was well on her way and was only, a couple of years away from graduating from high school when this all started cracking apart. And within a couple of weeks of my ex-husband walking out, my whole entire life walked out with it. And for 2 years, I think, 2, maybe 3 years, I stood around going, what did I do wrong? How is this possible? And had gone through a lot of stuff already with mental health issues, addictions, all kinds of stuff. And so I'm not saying that there wasn't good reason for people to be upset. However, I had no idea, I'm not trying to hurt you. I understand that we all have our issues, and you're angry perhaps about, some things that have been going on, but I'm not trying to cause you pain. I'm not trying to, stalk you or steal from you or cause you physical harm. I'm not trying to bully you, intimidate you, or physically assault you. What is going on here? And it seemed that because I didn't understand, I was really losing the battle. And so I had to go very internal with myself and learn what surrender was. Surrender to the point of, at one point I was on the floor and pretty much had given up. I don't have anything else to give here. And I heard, very clearly that surrender this and let it go. And I thought, okay, well, I don't really know what that means. Does this mean it's the end? It's the end. And the conversation connected a little bit further with, it's the end of your life as you know it now. If you choose to come up out of this situation, it will be incredibly painful, more so than you've experienced already for the first few months of this little horror show that you've been living through. It will be more uncomfortable, it will be more painful. However, you will be aligned with what is your highest timeline in whatever verbiage back then I was understanding it to be. It wasn't all that, but that was the flavor of it back then, that if you choose to rise up out of this and literally live, through this experience, it will be difficult, it will be hard. However, you will be on the other side of it, and you'll be liberated and free. And I really didn't know what liberated and free meant, but I figured, well, upside just cashing in. It was so tempting because I was so tired, I was so broken, and I was so sad. I feel the grief of that now. I was so sad with, I can't believe through decades of my life, I've just been tossed aside like a snotty rag, and my whole entire, life as I knew it has just been ripped apart by people that I thought loved me, my family of origin. What the hell is happening to me? And my own children are turning against me. What is this? I don't understand this at all. And yet, though the temptation was very great to just say, cool, I'm good, no harm, no foul, I'm out. Let these people go ahead and have whatever weird thing they're having. I just don't have it to give anymore because I've lost already so much, been humiliated and dragged out in public, and, wounded mortally in my emotions, and been hungry, and, just absolutely brutalized in ways that were inhumane to me, that I don't understand what this public excoriation is about, or what the hell is going on. However, the temptation came, and it was very much so on my plate to decide, and it seemed like, well, if I really can rise up out of this, and it's going to be liberation, and freedom, that was the word that stuck for me, or whatever that overtone was in me, that I will have to work harder. I can't imagine how I'm going to survive that, but whatever power it is in me that is guaranteeing that I will be able, 717, to be free, will give me the power and the strength to move through this, that clearly I don't have the strength anymore. I'm literally on this floor, and taking my last few breaths here. This is it. I'm done, and I had huge problems going on medically, so it was really happening. It wasn't just a matter of, completely giving up. It's that my body was willing to shut down, and my mind, would have shut down, obviously, if my body had gone ahead and finished out the whole thing. However, the conversation with my spirit, my soul, my mind, my body, my team, all parts of me that were aware of that. It was the first time I ever heard anything that loud and that clearly, that this is your choice point, and you've been really not able to hear us up until now. However, I did hear it at that point, 808, and I knew that, okay, I really think that whatever it is that's talking to me must have the ability to guide me, and will be able to carry me through this, even though it's going to get worse. I can't imagine how, it will be worse, and it will be somehow better, or more, I'll be more capable. I'm not even walking right now, and I haven't eaten for 2 days. It's a little bit hard to believe. However, I felt it deep in me that because I was being given the choice to leave honorably, to just disembody and be gone, and leave honorably with, you've done your best work that you can here, and if that's your choice, then please do that. And if you'd rather, if you have what it takes, and that you want to have what it takes, we can help you, and we can guide you to do what's necessary for you to get up and survive this event. And it did happen. It was a very long and slow crawl. Took it 2 years at least from that point, through a lot of pain, a lot of neurological disorder, a whole lot of just physical illness, and very big, huge mental challenges, to be sure. However, the greatest thing that I felt like I was going to be dealing with was not surrendering my marriage, not surrendering my family of origin, not surrendering all the things, all the trappings, the car, the house, all of that. It wasn't that. It was the relationship with my children, that I don't know how it is that, I can give birth to two people, and they're somehow, not knowing who I am, and that they're being easily manipulated to believe something about me that isn't true. Let's talk in fair, quantity here of what really was happening, then sure, I can take responsibility. However, why are they coming at me, calling me the devil and saying that I've suddenly, turned into something that is nothing like what they've ever known me to be? And yet when I look across the table at everybody, they're showing me people that I've never seen before, that I don't even know who this is, what's going on here. And it caused me a lot of grief, and it caused me a lot of pain, because no mother, well, not me as a mother, that's what I can say. Me as a mother, I never once, considered that I was going to give birth to 2 children and then one day be estranged from them and have no idea how they're doing, what their phone number is, where they live, or what they're up to. That it would be a normal baseline for me to wonder, what my own kin, my own flesh and blood, my own children are doing. And yet that is where I arrived. And I've oftentimes questioned, spirit, and said, why is that necessary? Why would we get into a situation? Why would I be here as a spiritual being, to give birth to people and then have zero, connection with them? 11:11, my ex-husband, I can understand. My own, family of origin, I can understand. We weren't connected. And my ex-husband, that was a challenge anyway, that, really wasn't 11:22 very well suited. However, I felt very connected to my children. Out of all of that, they were the ones that I felt the most connected to, and the most committed to. And yet they were being bamboozled and told stories that they were believing, and, being fed lies about me. That, have you ever seen me do anything unconscionable like that? What are you saying? And yet when I asked the question of why them, why am I being asked to go with the flow of this? How can I possibly go with the flow and surrender to people that I birthed into this world, that I chose to bring into this world with my ex-husband, that they were conscious, mindful, pregnancies, and they were wanted. And, though I wasn't the most stellar parent, and I did, take a lot of time to myself in terms of being addicted to benzodiazepines and sleeping a lot and being super stressed out, I still was very committed to making sure that they never felt on their birthday the way that I did whenever I was growing up, that they never went without any of the things that a child, going through the different stages of life would be without. You have new shoes, you don't look like a total dork in junior high school, you get to take lessons of whatever it is that interests you. And I was more likely to overdo and be over available and then be way under available, because I didn't understand the balance. However, I could not for the life of me understand, why am I being punished? The family I grew up in, the mother that I had, there was not even remotely close to any kind of an emotional connection. And my sister, she's mean and hateful and always has been. Why am I being punished by not being allowed to even have, my own children in this? My ex-husband, fine, please move on. We aren't well suited and haven't been for a long time, and that's fine. However, why do you need to take my children with you? And why does my mother and my sister want this to be what's true for me, is to punish me and be hateful to me? And I just didn't understand it. And there was some bitterness, probably anger, I'm not even sure how to catalog it. A lot of misunderstanding with spirit, with God, with the universe, with, what is this that, the 2 people that I care the most about in this are the 2 people that will be the least likely to return to me, and the others, even if the other 3 did return, I don't want them. I'm good with, we can just cut that contract. And, do I in fact have a contract? And what I've come to learn about that is that I don't have everything worked out, for everybody else. I don't have anything worked out for myself, necessarily, except that from day to day, I learn more as I'm given more to learn. And the last place I rested is that, empaths are there to really help people understand and awaken sometimes. And there are many times that is in a family unit where, you're the odd duck out, you're the black sheep, etc., who becomes the goat. Well, then that can include children, it can include mothers, it can include sisters, brothers, cousins, husbands, bosses, it can include anyone. There's no one off the table for a spiritual awakening, and it really doesn't matter what the familial connection is out here in 3D, what that lineage says, what the bloodline says. It really doesn't have anything to do with that there are some karmic things that happen, there are contractual things that happen, and there are just, things that are going to be made with the free will of trauma that's occurred in people's lives, and, the manipulation and other influences from other people. That the greatest thing that I could learn out of that was that there's a lot going on that's none of your business, and for you to surrender, is going to be the most beneficial thing, the most powerful thing that you can do for yourself, Kate, first of all, because even if they came back tomorrow and you are gone, does it matter? And I can't say that, I stayed alive just for my children. I thought there was going to be a much broader, understanding of healing, etc., across the board for everybody, and I was mistaken about everybody but me. And yet I did get the clear message that regardless of what the entanglements are, regardless what the contracts may or may not be, regardless of what the 3D faces were saying or believing, I still don't have any more power than to surrender completely, even when I don't understand it, even when it doesn't make sense to me, even when it grieves me greatly. I've had to surrender everything. I didn't have a choice. It walked out and, just thumped me on the forehead before it left. Every single person that, told me to F off included, right down to my children. And though it hurt immensely, and it was not so much anymore, it was very shaming to talk about that, because it's unnatural for, a mother to be estranged from her children, in my humble opinion. And yet I'm estranged from my mother and have absolutely zero problem with that. And so, and I do know that estrangement happens. I just didn't understand, why are you asking me to surrender? Why is this allowed to happen? Why is it that, the two people that I have the most connection to and feel like I am obligated to help them because they're caught in this stuff, do they understand what's happening here? Do they know? And I worked furiously, taking abusive behavior in the process. I will be honest, I'm not going to give my children a free pass for the way they spoke to me and some of the things that they did to me during that period of time when, I finally just had to say, please, stop. You have the ability to reach me if you want to. However, this can't happen anymore the way that this is happening, because I didn't really want to get into, divulging to them the horror of what was happening that they really didn't know about their father, their grandmother, and their aunt and stuff like that I didn't want to, just lay it all out there. And yet I also didn't want to be taking the abuse of being accused of being a drug addict and a porn star and selling drugs. I mean, I got accused of doing all kinds of stuff that, and, just horrible stuff was happening, that it was causing more damage. And there was so much argument, and it broke my heart even more so to be arguing my position of, why am I looking at, somebody that I've spent, your whole life with you, and I'm explaining to you, I'm arguing my position of not being on OnlyFans, and not being a drug dealer. Are you kidding me? That was so mind-blowing that I just couldn't handle that, and that broke my heart more than saying, when you understand more, when you know more, and when you have more information, it'll make more sense to you. But I can't say that over the years, it's been quite a number of years now, I can't say that over the years it's gotten easier. When these days come that I just feel that, supermoon release, this is a big one, the harvest moon, it's supermoon, and it's a release, and it's a redefining of, us again and again and again, just like every day is if we're in that angle. And yet I'm feeling the strength and the pull of supercharged energy right now to release and let go of the old identity. And yet, why is it that empaths would be charged with being in situations where they're going to be set up to have their heart broken? And there's many reasons, your story is your story, and I certainly don't, incline to tell you what it is. I just know that it can be very confusing, and it can be very, it can be very difficult to try to grieve something that comes back around and is feeling very tender. I love my children greatly, and yet I was so disappointed with the fact that, you're believing things so easily. Why is that? And I also had to look at the duplicity of, no matter how much I love you, if you really can't be respectful of me or treat me like I'm a basic person, that deserves human decency, regardless of how mad you might be. There was nobody that could do that, and I especially knew that if my children can't do that, I really cannot trust you to come near me, because there's other factors that are influencing you to know where I live, to stalk, and to do things, to financially ruin, to just go out of the way, to be very scary, bullyish, and weird, that I have to disconnect from you. And that feeds the story of, see how much your mother doesn't love you, see how much she fill in the blank. And it felt like such a trapped and victimized place to be, and sometimes it still does. I can't say that I feel warm and fuzzy about it at this very moment, and yet in my stronger moments, this moment will pass. It's been all day, however, this will pass, because that's part of the shedding of the skin, is being able to look at that duplicity and deal with the fact that I put in a lot of very good years with my children and with my family in general, that I will never ever be sorry for being kind or loving, where I was with anybody ever, and I will never be sorry that I was who I was. I do regret that years were lost, days were lost, time was lost in the fog of me not being the best version of me. However, every individual is sovereign and free to choose, and no matter whether I feel like I've been victimized or not, it doesn't serve me to stay in that spot very long. It serves me better to know that there's always a higher plan, there's always higher learning, and there's always a higher order to things, and I rarely am going to be able to understand them in their full totality, and when it's really kind of kinked up and bound up still for me years later, that means that I don't need to know. If I need to know, then it would be more resolved in me. Most of the time it is. However, today there's something unraveling somewhere in me, and the less that I try to investigate or move away from the discomfort of the feeling of it, the better. The more that I reach inside and really grieve the fact that that was a loss that I don't want to say that, gosh, I hope it'll, do something in particular one day. What I really say is I pray for the sovereignty of all beings, and I pray for my children that, they come to understand themselves, and that they know that their mother loved them regardless of how well she did, in their opinion, and that they will come to bring healing, that they'll have healing in their heart, deep in their heart, regardless of whether I'm with them or not, because, I could be gone now anyway, and was on my deathbed 10 or 12 years ago. I was on my deathbed, on my way years before we all separated and broke apart. And so it's not for me to be overly concerned about what they'll be able to do, who's doing what to them, or understanding them as a victim any more than me. It also, in that polarity, has been given to me to not really spend a lot of time, pining and looking to stay connected in my mind, that they have to be free to choose. And it's like, capture a butterfly or a bird or something, that if you capture something and hold on to it, you're capturing it, it's caged. Whereas if you let it go and it comes back to you, that is exactly what I'm called to do again and again, is to release those things, even when I don't understand them, to surrender to the flow when it crushes my heart and breaks my heart, makes me sad, makes me, really cry and think, oh my God, I can't believe this, what is this? That is a more temporary place to stand than it is to, not be there, honestly. However, it didn't get there. There was constant grief until I just let go of that, let go of this. They do not want to be with you, and your misunderstanding of it is yours. They're clear. They're not answering you. They're disrespectful when they do. They're showing you that their behavior is showing you it doesn't matter what you think of that. Surrender this process, and surrender your process of holding on and start trying to keep control of it just because of your title in their lives. They're not interested in that. And I have no idea, what the final outcome is. I rarely do. I can't say that I know anything until it happens, even though I I can feel stuff moving. Everybody has free choice, and I don't dictate anybody else's choices but mine. But I do, when I hold them in my heart and I feel that tender space for them, I really send them prayers, and I put them in a sanctuary, a bubble, and say, thank you for all of the lessons that I learned. And I do hope that you'll know what it is to be a strong and empowered woman, regardless of the fact that your mom didn't show you that until after, you were grown. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to really show you that as you were growing up. However, I do pray into this sanctuary, this little bubble of healing, that I pray for you to know that about yourself and to be empowered and strong to make your own decisions, not just about me, not to return to me, not to, appease me in some way, that you find healing, period. And if that brings you back through, then hallelujah, amen. However, the more important thing is I want you to find healing. I want you to find respite from the grief and the torment that has been in your soul and in your heart, and from the trauma that was created by parents who were not really parenting very well or in a healthy way. I'm so sorry. And may you find your way, regardless of whether I'm in your world or not. And that I found over the years is the strongest prayer that I can have for them, and I don't keep them in my mind every day to say that, because I found that to be too painful as well, and it kept up a karmic loop of continuing to stay somewhat attached, that it came to me very clearly that release them and let them go. They must be able to fly away and not worry that you are energetically still connected to them somehow, or that you have some expectation of them somehow. I have zero expectation of my children or anyone else, because I do understand 2626 is 88. I do understand that this is a time of great, spiritual healing and great awakening for many people, and the strongest, most potent awakenings that people can have, if they're going to have them, if they choose to go with them, is to allow them to be sovereign and free with the absence of energy. And that is what they were trying to do along with the other people. It was just easier for me to let the other people go, because they were clearly karmic to me. They were clearly very toxic and dysfunctional to me. And my children and I had a very dysfunctional relationship too. However, I figured, well, once we clear out the trash, we'll be able to heal this. And that is simply not the way that worked out. Whether it was contractually agreed upon before we got here and all of that, I wasn't given any access to read into that, and I was told very clearly, that's none of your business. You do not have that connection, nor do you have that authority, and that's just not something that I do at all, nor do I want to, because I understand that the greatest sovereignty that anybody can have in returning to anybody, or meeting somebody and creating something new, is to understand themselves as very strong, independent, sovereign beings, clear of energy, that would ask them to please keep a hold of me, please keep a little piece of me, please keep me in your heart somewhere. It doesn't mean that I don't love people, it doesn't mean that I don't grieve, and it doesn't mean that I don't feel the pain. I'm a whole human. I feel the loss, and birthdays go by, and I understand what's happening. However, I also know that for me to be the strongest, most sovereign individual that I can be on this planet is going to surge into energetic fields that are connected to me, whomever, wherever, whatever it is, regardless of who it is, that it will surge into those energetic fields exactly in the most powerful way possible, more so, and offer more benefit than if I'm distracted trying to split myself out, wondering, how I can get my children to come back to me, or how I can reach resolution with, my mommy or something like that. That no, when it wasn't happening, and I started asking those questions, the answer was clear of, it's time to get out of here. It's time to stop doing this, because you're asking for the sovereignty of other people to come and save you from understanding that you have to let people walk away. You have to let people crash into the wall. You have to let people, go and have a ball. You have to let people go. You cannot for any reason of your own, you may not cling to them or ask them to save you in any space whatsoever. You may not be codependent with them, regardless of who they used to be to you. And likewise, Katie, you may not allow them to do that with you. That was a whole severing of a lot of karmic stuff that, man, it digs deep and it stabs hard, especially when there's been a lot of trauma and a lot of pain and a lot of very big, huge betrayal of just cruelty that I don't play like that. However, it also leaves people with empaths in that very dark, triad stuff, that when we're there and we break out of that and we heal that and we sever all those ties, that is left with the most powerful awakening for people to open their eyes of, wow, if they're going to see, I've been really awful, I've been, really in the dark and ignorant and out of my heart hard, that's going to be the polarity. However, it doesn't happen as strong or with as much activation or potentiation if we're still kind of connected to it and carrying some of the burden of it. So it seems like enough. And ironically, it went from 80 degrees yesterday to 50 something today, and it's been very gray and overcast where I live. I've had my fireplace on and just kind of snuggled up today, feeling very tired. And like I said, grief, sadness, and yet also feeling the empowerment of the season. It's a very magical season, a lot of transformation, and giving birth is painful. Butterfly coming out of the chrysalis is not an easy process, and shedding skin, etc. It's not necessarily pretty. It's definitely not easy. However, keeping my eye on the prize is that I don't know what the end game is for specific people. However, I know that these transformational periods, these liminal periods, they don't last forever, even though they suck and I don't like them a whole lot. 3113, I can say with great appreciation that I've always made it to the other side, and even if my body was unalive, I'd still be making it to the other side of something that would be without this struggle. So I'm either waking up tomorrow here without this struggle, or I'm waking up there without that struggle. However, the struggle does, abate. It does go away more the more that I surrender into that and allow myself to grieve and throw up and feel very sad, feel very angry, feel whatever it is, and really nurture myself through those experiences of knowing that, yep, terrible things happened, and what are we going to do to take care of you, Kate? What are we going to do? Are we going to take a bath and, really tenderly, lovingly prepare that and do something special? Or are we going to eat a special meal? And so one of my favorite ways to bring myself back to healing and nurturing is to watch Disney movies. And I've been nerding out, watching Halloween movies on Disney, as well as watching The Nanny, which I never watched it in the 80s. It's hilarious. Just coaching myself through the day very gingerly and tenderly, and not worrying about what anybody else is doing or what I should be doing. I need to be taking care of me because I'm in a grieving process of something else that's dying away from me. Whether it's me or somebody else, it doesn't matter. It's a grieving process regardless, and the less that I distract myself with trying to identify and label everything, the more that I can really meet the need of those tenderest parts of me that really need my attention more than wondering what the logistical troop movement is of everything else. So anyway, I hope that you enjoy your day no matter what part of the day you're in, and I hope that you will get within your skin because you're divine. It is so, so, so magical, even if you're hurting, especially when you're hurting. It's a good time to remember that your divine is fine, and it's beautiful. Human beings, we get beat up hard, and we feel nasty, we feel grungy, and we feel slimed, and we've been victimized, etc. However, our spirit and our divine is absolutely pure. It's crystalline. It's the very thing that can pull us through. But that can be hard sometimes to remember, or to even 33 think of without a reminder. So I hope that this is a reminder call to you that you are a beautiful being, even if that's not what you think you're seeing. It is what I see in you. It's what I see in me. And I'm so happy when I have someone in the middle of nowhere that reminds me that, oh yes, I am sovereign and I am free, and I'm having a whole human moment where I have to go throw up and cry a little little bit, a lot of it, and do what it is that I have to do. It's very messy sometimes, and it's not pretty. However, it's reality. As we move into the 5D, a different experience of our reality. So anyway, take care of yourselves and be well, and remember that you're divine. It's gorgeous and it's totally fine. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you again next time. Goodbye, beautiful friends. Mwah.